I thought it was going to be the happiest day of my life, until my daughter-in-law decided to pour 2 liters of cold water on me at my son's wedding. I stood there, my heart sinking as I watched my daughter-in-law, Romy, grinning like it was the funniest thing in the world. She had just dumped that cold, soaking water all over me, laughing while everyone else in the room stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The wedding, the day I had been waiting for, was turning into a nightmare, and I was at the center of it. I tried to hold back the tears, tried to convince myself that maybe it was a joke, maybe I was overreacting. But the way she smiled at me, that smug little grin, made me feel like a fool. I had been the one who had been there for my son, Jason, through thick and thin. And now, at his wedding, this is how I was treated? "Mom, it's just a joke," Jason called out, as if that would make it all okay. He laughed it off, but I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't the same look he used to give me when he was a child, the look of admiration and respect. Now it was empty. My own son wasn't standing by me. I felt the sting of betrayal deeper than the cold water that drenched me. I had given so much to this family. I had sacrificed so much to make sure Jason had everything he needed growing up. But this was beyond disrespect. As I stood there, drenched and humiliated, I realized something. Romy had been plotting this all along. She had done everything in her power to make me feel small, to isolate me from my son. The subtle slights, the cold dismissals, the way she'd take Jason away from me little by little. But this was the final straw. As I wiped my face, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled, holding back the anger that burned in my chest. And as they carried on with their little celebration, pretending like nothing had happened, I made a decision. I would get through this, and I would make them regret underestimating me. This wasn't the end for me. This was just the beginning. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was still standing there, soaked to the bone, as the laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. My son, Jason, was smiling as if nothing was wrong, completely oblivious to the hurt I was feeling. I glanced around at the guests, some of them awkwardly avoiding eye contact, while others seemed to find the whole thing amusing. It wasn't funny, not to me. I had been a part of this family for so long, had done everything for them. And this was how they repaid me? I tried to shake off the shock, but my mind kept racing. What had gone wrong? Where had I gone wrong? I had spent my whole life raising Jason, making sure he had everything he needed. I had put my own life on hold to be there for him. But now, as I stood there, feeling like an outsider at my own son's wedding, I couldn't help but wonder if all those years of sacrifice had been for nothing. I tried to steady my breathing, to calm the storm that was building inside me. I wasn't going to let them see me break. Not today, not in front of everyone. But deep down, I felt a cold, creeping realization. Romy had been slowly chipping away at my place in Jason's life for years. First, it was the little things. The way she made it clear that she didn't like me getting too involved in their lives. The way she would suggest that I shouldn't visit too often, that I should give them space. And Jason? He went along with it. Slowly, over the years, I had gone from being his #1 priority to an afterthought. At first, I told myself it was just the growing pains of him starting his own family. I understood. But now, this was different. This was intentional. It was a slap in the face, and it hurt more than I could put into words. As the night wore on, I quietly excused myself from the festivities. I needed space. I needed time to process what had just happened. The wedding, which should have been a joyous occasion, had been turned into a painful reminder of how much I had been pushed aside. I made my way to the bathroom, my mind swirling with thoughts. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, still drenched from Romy's little joke. I didn't even recognize the woman staring back at me. Her face was tired, her eyes weary from years of trying to hold everything together. It was as if the years of sacrifices, the endless giving, had worn her down to the point where she no longer knew who she was. I could feel the tears threatening to spill, but I didn't let them. No, I wasn't going to cry. Not for them. Not anymore. I had spent far too many years making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that it would get better. But it hadn't. It was only getting worse. As I stood there in the bathroom, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them treat me like this anymore. I wasn't going to let Romy or anyone else dictate how I was supposed to feel. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first, bending over backward to make sure everyone else was happy, while I was ignored, pushed aside, and disrespected. But not anymore. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let Romy win. I took a deep breath and wiped away the last of my tears. When I walked out of the bathroom, I was different. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that room earlier. I was stronger now, more determined. I wasn't going to let my son or his wife see me as weak. They had underestimated me, and that was a mistake. I wasn't going to sit by and watch them tear my family apart. It was time to take control. I walked back into the reception hall, my head held high, ready to face whatever came next. I had a plan, and they weren't going to like it. I sat at the table, trying to gather my thoughts, but they were all jumbled, tangled in the hurt and confusion I had felt just hours earlier. The wedding reception was still going on, but I couldn't bring myself to participate any longer. I felt like I was just going through the motions, like a ghost among the living. The laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses, they all felt like distant sounds, too far away from where I stood now, inside my own thoughts. I glanced around the room, watching people mingle and celebrate, oblivious to the storm I was battling in my heart. Romy was laughing with some guests near the bar, her laughter ringing through the room like a sharp reminder of what she had just done to me. Jason was standing by her, but he wasn't looking at me. He hadn't looked at me the same way in years, and tonight, it felt like a sharp, aching absence. I couldn't help but think back to how everything had changed over the years. When Jason was little, he would run to me with open arms, eager to share his day, eager to be near me. I was his safe place, his constant. But somewhere along the way, that had shifted. First, it was small things, like him spending more time with friends than with me. I told myself it was just part of growing up. Then, it was the way he started spending more weekends at Romy's family's house, less time visiting me. I convinced myself that he was just being a good husband. But now, standing here, I realized it had all been a slow fade, a gradual erasure of the bond we once had. And Romy, she had always been sweet to my face, but there was something about her that felt off. It was in the little things, the way she would subtly pull Jason away when I tried to make plans, the way she would make little comments about how I should take it easy, how I was getting older, how I should make less of an effort to be involved in their lives. It wasn't until today, though, that I understood the full extent of what had been happening. This wasn't just about me being a concerned mother. This was about me being pushed out of their lives entirely. They didn't want me here. They didn't want me part of their family. And that hurt more than I could ever express. But as I sat there, feeling the sting of that realization, something in me shifted. I wasn't going to let this continue. I wasn't going to let them treat me like this anymore. They thought they could push me aside, humiliate me in front of everyone, and I would just take it. But I wasn't the same woman I used to be. I had spent so many years giving, and now it was time for me to take control. They had underestimated me, and that was a mistake. I wasn't going to keep quiet anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let them destroy what was left of my dignity. I took a deep breath and stood up, steadying myself. I knew I couldn't stay in this room any longer. I needed to leave, but not without a plan. As I walked out of the reception hall, I heard laughter from behind me, but it didn't affect me anymore. I didn't look back. I wasn't going to be part of their game any longer. I was going to take my life back, and I was going to make them realize they couldn't keep treating me like this. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first, but now it was time to put myself first. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of what they might say or do. I wasn't afraid of being alone. Because the truth was, I had never been alone. Not really. And I wasn't about to start now. I walked outside into the cool evening air, the night sky above me offering a brief respite from the tension in my chest. The noise of the reception faded away behind me, but the weight of everything that had just happened still clung to me. I could feel the sting of Romy's actions as if they had burned through my skin, leaving marks that wouldn't heal so easily. But I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to let her win. For years, I had been there for Jason, for the family. I had watched him grow from a little boy into a man, and as he found his way in the world, I had been his anchor. I had put him first, always. I never asked for much in return, except for the respect that every mother deserves from her child. But today, I saw that it wasn't just respect I had lost. It was something much deeper, much more fundamental. I wasn't a part of their world anymore. They had made that clear. Romy had made that clear. My mind wandered back to the countless moments when I had tried to hold onto the connection with my son. How many times had I called him, only for him to be too busy to answer? How many dinners had I prepared, only to have him cancel at the last minute with some excuse about work or Romy's family? At first, I had told myself it was just part of life. He was building a family of his own, after all. But then, the calls grew fewer, and the visits became more like obligations than moments of love. Romy had been the one to encourage that, I knew. She always had an opinion on how things should be done, how much time Jason should spend with me, and when it was appropriate for me to come around. I had let it slide. I had let her push me aside because I didn't want to cause problems, didn't want to make things difficult for Jason. But now, seeing her so easily humiliate me in front of everyone, I understood. It wasn't just about space, it was about control. Romy wanted control over everything in their lives. And that included pushing me out. The thought made my stomach turn, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to be a passive participant in this game anymore. I had to take back control of my life, of my relationship with Jason. I wasn't going to sit by and let them turn me into a stranger in my own family. I didn't know how, not yet, but I knew I had to do something. I walked toward my car, the gravel crunching under my feet with each step. The air was brisk, but it didn't bother me. I had spent so many years in the background, letting others dictate the terms of my life. Not anymore. The next few weeks were going to be difficult, I knew that, but they were going to be necessary. I had to remind Jason who I was, remind him that I wasn't just a bystander in his life. I was his mother, and I wasn't going to be cast aside any longer. I reached my car, feeling the familiar cool metal beneath my fingertips. I hadn't felt this determined in years, not since Jason was a child, and I had fought so hard for him to have the best life possible. I had fought for him then, and I was going to fight for him now. But this time, it wasn't for him. It was for me. For my dignity. I got in my car and started the engine, the hum of the motor grounding me in the reality of what I had to do. I wasn't sure how I was going to make things right, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Romy's actions slide. Not anymore. As I drove away, I could already feel the wheels turning in my head, coming up with a plan, coming up with the strength to confront the family I had worked so hard to build. I wasn't going to let them tear it down. Not without a fight. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to piece together everything that had happened, trying to figure out how to make sense of it all. Romy's actions still stung, but they had sparked something in me that I hadn't felt in years, an undeniable need to take control of my own life again. It wasn't just about her, it was about me. It was about reclaiming the respect that I had lost somewhere along the way, about proving to myself that I wasn't invisible. I wasn't going to let them think they could push me aside without facing any consequences. It was hard, harder than I ever expected, but I had made a decision. I wasn't going to be a doormat. I wasn't going to sit quietly while they stripped me of my dignity. The first step was to face Jason. I knew I had to talk to him, but I wasn't sure how. How do you talk to your son, the one you've raised and loved all his life, when you feel like a stranger to him now? I spent hours pacing around my house, running over possible conversations in my head, trying to figure out what to say. But no matter what words I came up with, they all felt hollow. Nothing seemed like enough to fix what had been broken. Finally, I decided to just be honest. I had to speak from the heart. I couldn't pretend anymore. I called him. It rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice light, but I could hear the underlying tension. He knew something was off. "Jason," I started, my voice a little shaky. "We need to talk. About the wedding, about everything." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I wondered if he was going to hang up. But then he sighed. "I know, Mom. I know you're upset. I didn't think it would be a big deal. Romy thought it was funny, and I just went along with it. I didn't think it would hurt you." I felt my chest tighten. "It's not about the water, Jason. It's about how I've been treated. It's about how I've been pushed out of your life, little by little. And you've let it happen." His silence on the other end of the phone felt like a punch to the gut. I could hear him breathing, but he didn't speak. "I've tried so hard, Jason. I've been there for you your whole life. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me. You stopped caring." I could feel the tears threatening to spill, but I swallowed them down. I wasn't going to cry. Not for him. I've been trying to be understanding. I've been trying to let Romy have her space. But this is too much. I'm your mother, and I deserve more than this. I deserve respect. Another long pause. This time, when Jason finally spoke, his voice was softer. I didn't realize you felt that way, Mom. I'm sorry. I've been so caught up in my own world. I didn't see it. I didn't see you slipping away. His words stung, but they were also the first sign of acknowledgement I had gotten in so long. I don't know what to say, he continued. I didn't mean for things to get like this. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. It's not just about the wedding, Jason. It's about the years. The years of me putting everyone else first. The years of me letting you and Romy make decisions for me. Telling me when I could visit, when I could call. I'm not asking for much. I just want to be a part of your life, a real part of it. Not just someone you call when you need something. There was another long silence, and I felt like the weight of everything was crashing down on me. I was tired, so tired, of fighting for my place in their lives. But I wasn't giving up, not now. Mom, Jason started, but I cut him off. I don't need excuses. Jason, I need change. I need to know that I matter, that I'm not just someone you can brush aside when it's convenient for you. I need to know that you still see me. His voice cracked slightly as he replied, I do see you, Mom. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. I closed my eyes, the tears finally coming now. But I didn't let them fall. I'm not going anywhere, Jason. But things need to change. And I'm not going to wait around for it to happen. I'm taking control of my life again. There was a quiet understanding between us now, something we hadn't shared in years. It wasn't fixed. Nothing was fixed. But it was a start. And that was enough for now. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. Maybe it wasn't perfect, maybe it wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken a step in the right direction. I spent the next few days reflecting on my conversation with Jason. It had been difficult, raw, and emotional, but it was a start. I hadn't expected things to be fixed overnight, but the fact that Jason had listened, really listened, meant something. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the first step toward healing. Yet, even with that conversation behind me, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted. It wasn't just about Romy anymore. It was about me, about what I was willing to accept from my own family. That night, I found myself staring out the window, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. It was a quiet, peaceful night, but I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. The quiet was comforting, but it also made everything feel so much more real. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being the one who held everything together. But now, I was faced with the reality that I couldn't always fix things. I couldn't always keep the peace, and maybe that was okay. The phone call with Jason had left me with a sense of hope, but it also left me with questions. How much had I allowed Romy to control over the years? How much had I allowed myself to be pushed aside for the sake of family harmony? These questions swirled in my mind as I sat in the quiet of my living room, the house feeling emptier than ever before. I thought about all the times I had been dismissed, the moments I had allowed to slide because I didn't want to rock the boat. But those days were over now. I was done making excuses for their behavior. I was done pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I knew I couldn't change the past, but I could change how I moved forward. I could stand up for myself. I could demand the respect I deserved, and I could no longer let anyone push me around. The next few days were filled with small steps, setting boundaries, finding my voice again, and, most importantly, taking care of myself. I started by calling up old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I reconnected with the ones who had always been there for me, who reminded me of the woman I used to be before all of this. It felt good to laugh again, to have real conversations about life without feeling judged or sidelined. I even started attending yoga classes again, something I hadn't done in years, just to give myself some time to breathe and focus on my own well-being. It wasn't about running away from the problem. It was about giving myself the strength to face it head-on. As I walked through the door one evening, I was met with an unexpected sight. Jason was standing in the living room, looking somewhat uneasy but determined. I froze for a moment, not sure what to expect. "Mom," he said softly, his voice a little strained, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I know I've messed up, and I can't change the past. But I want to make things right. I don't want to lose you, and I want you to be a part of my life again. I didn't know how to make that happen, but I'm here now. I'm willing to try." I could feel my heart skip a beat. For the first time in a long while, I could see the son I once knew. The one who cared, the one who wanted to make things right. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "That's all I needed, Jason. Just the willingness to try." He smiled, a real, genuine smile, and it made my heart swell with a sense of hope. Things wouldn't magically fix themselves overnight, but this was the beginning of something new. A new chapter. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally being seen again, and it felt like the weight that had been pressing on me for so long was starting to lift. It was going to take time, but I was ready. Ready to rebuild, ready to heal, and ready to be the woman I used to be, the one who had a place in her family, and the one who had never been afraid to stand up for herself. I didn't expect everything to change overnight, but the following weeks brought a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time. Jason's apology had opened a door, but I knew that it was only the beginning. There was still so much to mend, so much to rebuild. Yet, for the first time in ages, I could breathe. I wasn't trapped in the constant cycle of resentment and pain that had been my reality for so long. I had learned to stand up for myself, to claim the respect I deserved. But what surprised me most was how much of a difference it made to simply start living for myself again. I spent more time outside, going for walks in the park and soaking in the quiet, peaceful moments that I had long neglected. I even picked up my old hobbies, things I used to enjoy before everything had become so consumed by others' needs. I had always put everyone ahead of me. It had been my role, my identity, being the mother, the one who always cared for everyone else. But now, for the first time in years, I was starting to think about what I wanted. I began reading books again, books that had been gathering dust on my shelves. I enjoyed them in a way I hadn't for ages. I took up painting, something I'd always loved but had put aside because there was never enough time. I spent hours working on my latest piece, and it felt like a part of me had come alive again. It wasn't just about the physical activities, though. It was about reconnecting with myself. It was about acknowledging my own worth, my own needs, and my own happiness. The more I focused on myself, the more I realized just how much I had been neglecting for so long. But life was still complicated. Jason was trying, really trying, to show up for me in ways he hadn't before. He started calling more, making time to visit, and we even had dinner together a few times. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me finding a new rhythm in my life, one that didn't revolve around waiting for others to recognize my worth. It was about me recognizing it for myself. One evening, Jason came over for dinner, and this time, it felt different. There was a shift in the air, an unspoken understanding between us. He was no longer the son who had distanced himself from me. He was the son I had always known, the one who had once looked up to me with admiration. "I've been thinking," he said as we sat down to eat, "about how I've treated you, about everything. I know I can't change the past, but I want to make sure that doesn't happen again." His words were sincere, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the son I had missed. I saw him trying to make amends, to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't experienced in years. "I appreciate that, Jason," I said quietly, meeting his eyes. "But it's not just about saying sorry. It's about showing up, every day, not just when it's convenient. And it's about respect, real respect." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I get it, Mom, and I want to do better. I want us to be close again." That moment felt like the first step toward rebuilding the foundation of our relationship. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but I knew we had a chance. I wasn't going to let the past define us. We were going to move forward, one step at a time, and rebuild what had been lost. I knew it wasn't just about fixing our relationship. It was about me reclaiming my life and finding my own happiness again. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid of what came next. I had taken control of my own narrative, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that from me again. I knew I was finally starting to get my life back, but the reality of that didn't fully settle in until that evening when Jason came to visit again. It had been a few weeks since our last conversation, and in that time, he'd made real efforts to reconnect. The phone calls had become more regular, the visits more frequent. But tonight felt different. There was an energy in the room that I hadn't felt before, a sense of change that I wasn't sure how to embrace. As we sat down at the table, I could see the familiar tension in Jason's eyes. It wasn't anger or frustration this time, but something softer, something more open. He was trying, really trying, and for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe we both were. "Mom," he said, taking a deep breath, I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of soul-searching. I know I've hurt you. I've let you down in so many ways. I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late, but I want to change that." There was a quiet sincerity in his voice, something I hadn't heard from him in a long time. I could feel the years of tension between us start to slowly unravel, thread by thread. "I've been selfish," he continued. "I've been so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't see how much I was hurting you. I didn't see that I was pushing you away. And I'm sorry. I don't expect everything to be perfect, but I'm ready to try again. I don't want to lose you, Mom." I could feel a lump forming in my throat, but I refused to let the tears fall. "Not now, not after everything." "Jason," I said softly, looking at him with a steady gaze, "it's not about perfection. It's about consistency, about showing up when it matters, not just when it's easy. It's about respect, real respect. And I need you to understand that it's not just about what happened in the past. It's about moving forward, together. We both need to change, not just you." He nodded, his expression earnest, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the son I had once known. The son who had looked up to me, the son who had loved me without hesitation. And I realized, in that moment, that he was still there, beneath everything. The years of distance, of pain, hadn't erased the bond we shared. It was still there, buried beneath the surface, waiting to be rebuilt. And I was willing to rebuild it. "I'm willing to do that, Mom," Jason said, his voice full of determination. "I know I can't make up for everything, but I want to show you that I care. I want to show you that you matter to me, that you've always mattered to me." I reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You matter to me, too, Jason. I've always wanted what's best for you. I just needed to know that you saw me, that you respected me." He looked up at me, his eyes soft, and I could tell that he was finally understanding. The walls that had stood between us for so long were starting to crumble, and it felt like the beginning of something new. "I do see you, Mom. I do respect you," he whispered. I smiled, a small but genuine smile, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't fixed, not yet, but it was a step in the right direction. And that was enough for now. As we finished dinner, I realized that this was just the start. There would be bumps along the way, moments of tension and uncertainty, but I was no longer afraid of what was to come. I had taken control of my life, and now, together, Jason and I would navigate this new chapter. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just a bystander in my own life. I was living it, fully and completely. And that was more than enough. I sat quietly in my living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting a gentle light across the space. Jason had left earlier, but his words still lingered in the air. "I want to show you that I care." I repeated those words to myself, feeling a strange mix of hope and skepticism. The past had left its scars, and as much as I wanted to believe him, I knew that trust wasn't something easily given, not after everything that had happened. But there was something different in his eyes today, something that made me believe, even if just a little, that he might be ready to make things right. The silence around me was almost comforting. I had learned to find peace in the quiet, to embrace the stillness that had become so familiar to me. But today, that silence felt different. It felt like a new beginning. My thoughts drifted back to the years that had led me to this point. I had spent so much of my life putting others first, making sure Jason had everything he needed, supporting him through every stage of his life. But in the process, I had lost myself. I had neglected my own needs, my own desires, in favor of what I thought was best for him. I had always thought that if I kept giving, if I kept being there for him, everything would work out. But the truth was, I had been neglecting myself for so long that I had forgotten who I was. And when I thought about it now, it made me wonder, how had I let it get this far? Why had I let others dictate my happiness for so long? I had allowed myself to be overshadowed, to become invisible in my own life. But that was changing now. I wasn't going to wait around for others to validate me anymore. I was going to take control. I was going to rediscover who I was outside of being someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's caretaker. I had my own identity, and it was time I embraced it. The next few weeks were filled with small changes, but they were significant to me. I spent more time doing things for myself, taking care of my needs, and reconnecting with the parts of me I had long ignored. I started going for walks again, feeling the breeze against my skin, the sun on my face. I took up hobbies I had once loved, reading, painting, gardening. things that had always brought me joy but had been pushed aside for the sake of others. I began to feel like I was waking up from a long slumber. It wasn't just about filling my time. It was about filling my soul with the things that made me feel alive again. But while I was rediscovering myself, I also knew that my relationship with Jason wasn't going to fix itself overnight. I couldn't just erase the years of neglect, the silent treatment, and the hurt we had both caused. I had to be patient with him and with myself. So when Jason called again, I was ready. I had already made peace with myself, but I knew that healing would take time. "Mom," he said when I picked up the phone, his voice softer than before. "I've been thinking about everything we talked about. I know I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to work on this. I want to be part of your life, and I want you to be part of mine." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I wasn't expecting everything to be easy. But hearing those words, hearing the sincerity in his voice, gave me hope. "Thank you, Jason," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "That's all I've ever wanted. To know that you see me, that you respect me, and that you're here." I could hear him exhale on the other end of the line, as though a burden had been lifted from him too. "I see you, Mom. I promise you that I do." Those words meant more than I could explain. It wasn't the end of our journey, but it was a start, a real start. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer lost. I was exactly where I needed to be, on my own path, with my own purpose. Jason and I would rebuild our relationship, piece by piece. But this time, I was going to make sure that I was never lost in the process again.